Thank you very much. It is a bit like coming home. I did live in The Hague for 2 years, and indeed I was external examiner of the ISS, so it's a double pleasure to be invited here to talk on this series of population development, which has been sadly absent from the international discourse, really ever since Cairo, and to return to a city that I lived in for 2 years. I was introduced as a person with very strong and individual and independent views. I think I'm meek and mild. I just want to tell you the truth. The theme tonight is population and generations. So I'm going to concentrate on age structure as countries move from high mortality to high fertility down to low mortality and low fertility, because it is the key to understanding the huge importance of population trends for social and economic development. Let's start with the big picture. Here's life expectancy since 1950. Huge triumph of mankind over disease, great testimony to biomedical science. The thing you ought to point out, to note, is that Africa has lagged behind. 50 years ago, it was quite close in terms of life expectancy with the other developing regions. Now it's way behind. And that is not just due to AIDS. There's evidence also that non-AIDS death rates actually increased in the 90s. The 90s was a very bad decade for Africa with negative economic growth. Once mortalities decline, fertility decline is sooner or later inevitable. And this is what's happened to fertility since 1950 up to the beginning of this century. Europe down the bottom there, with fertility currently at about 1.5 births per woman, well below the 2-child mark that guarantees them the long-term stability of population size. Asia and Latin America, a huge decrease in fertility from about 6 births per woman down to a little under 3 today, and still declining. So the fertility transition is well on track in most of Asia and most of Latin America. But again, Africa stands out way above the other regions with high fertility, still on average across the whole region of 5 births per woman. And the worrying feature is that it hasn't changed much in the last decade. The fertility decline in Africa is not on track. And here is the dramatic representation of population increase in the long term from 1750 to the middle of this century. The height of those bars represents the decadal increase in population, and those skyscrapers peak in the decade that's just passed, 1990 to 2000. That highest column there represents an increase in world population of 1 billion in a mere 10 years. We will never see the like again. So the skyscraper landscape diminishes. But if you look to the left-hand side and the right-hand side of that tallest skyscraper, you don't see a huge difference. In the last 40 years, the increase in world population was 3 billion. In the next 40 years, it's going to be over 2.5 billion. So in absolute numbers, the future is rather similar to the past. And for the environment, it's not rates of increase that matter, it is absolute numbers. So those who think the population problem has somehow gone away and been solved, they're quite wrong. The increase we're going to see over the next few decades is almost as great as what has happened in the past few decades. I need to go backwards. Only she knows how to go backwards.
Sorry,
What are the causes of population increase? This is taken from work by John Bongartz, and the biggest component of future population growth is something called population momentum, which is the effect of age structure on birth rates. in a population where a lot of people are aged 20 to 40, even if they have small families, the birth rate is elevated, and that keeps population growth at. So the biggest cause of future population increase in the planet is age structure, population momentum. There are two other causes. One is unwanted fertility. About 20% of future increase is represented by children that mothers declare they didn't really want. And the historic mandate of family planning programs is to reduce unwanted fertility. And the third component of future population increase is that, particularly in Africa, but also in North India and a few other places, people want more than 2 children. And anything above 2 children tends to raise population growth in the future. I can't even go forward. This future population increase is by no means even across the major regions of the world. Here we have, for those major regions, population in 2005, projected population in mid-century, and the ratio of the mid-century projected population to current population. We start from the bottom. You'll see the world as a whole is projected to increase by 40%, a ratio of 1.40. Europe, even allowing for migration, which these UN projections do allow for, is projected to decline by 10%. Then you have a middle range of regions where population increases between 30 and 40%, Latin America, Asia, and North America. In North America, that's largely in migration, projected over the next 40 years. In Latin America and Asia, is mainly age structure. And lastly, at the top, we see sub-Saharan Africa with a ratio far above other regions, and more than doubling projected between now and mid-century. Now we're going to talk about generations and age structure, and I'm going to use the Republic of Korea to demonstrate the huge importance of age structure on human development. This is Korea in 1960. Mortality had declined steeply, but fertility was still above 6 births per woman. That is the population structure of a rapidly growing population. 45% of Korea's population in 1960 was aged under 15, and only a tiny fraction aged 65 or more. The red bit of the pyramid are the so-called